Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. The city's big Civic Esplanade project is coming in at millions of dollars over budget. Now council is tasked with deciding what to do. Plus, revitalization plans downtown has turned attention to a historic structure and reopened an old debate. We tell you what could be in store for the old barn, and there's speculation growing at Queen's Park that a provincial election could take place next year. A key piece of the city's proposed Civic Esplanade project is millions of dollars over budget. Council is being asked to spend money usually used for road work on a downtown ice rink. CBC's Chris Ensing reports.
These renderings show the first segment of a multi-phase Civic Esplanade project, a key component, the winter ice rink, which can act as a splash pad or water feature in warmer seasons. Council approved the concept last year, along with 4 other segments, stretching from City Hall to the Detroit River. The entire project aiming to anchor the city, telling Windsor's history with art pieces, outdoor exhibits, focusing on the region's role in the Underground Railway. The cost for this entire civic space was pegged at $30 million, but Phase 1 has come in significantly over budget. Council has set aside $9.3 million for the ice rink and the pavilion. City staff say that piece of the project needs another $6 million, and a decision needs to be made fast.
We needed it approved today to ensure that we have the opportunity to have the ice rink completed and ready for this season. So this is the reason for rushing the report. Otherwise, if we weren't in a time constraint, we could have let this process go through. But in order for us to have a chance to have it ready for this year, we needed it approved today is the message we got from the low bidder.
It couldn't be deferred 2 weeks so we can get delegates and community involved in determining whether or not this is a priority that we want to spend.
You can delay it, but then the rink would not be ready for this upcoming season.
Council decided to pause its decision, giving people more time to review the report. Councillor Fabio Costante supported the Civic Esplanade last year alongside the majority of council. Now, he's not so sure. The report shows the number of weeks an outdoor rink can operate in Windsor is on the decline because of climate change. This as the city opens indoor rinks for free public skating on certain days.
Climate change has created different types of winters now where the actual timelines to use outdoor ice rinks have considerably shrunk. And so, again, you've got the timeline shrinking, the cost ballooning, and then you've got the substitute amenity, which is free ice skating, that has been, I think will show has been proven popular. And so with all that taken into account, we should consider or maybe reconsider this project, at least in the interim.
At the end of the day, council just has to decide, do they want a 12-month feature that has ice skating, that has a water feature out front of their city hall, or do they want something less or do nothing at all? I mean, it's we've gone through and spent a lot of money getting the consultants' reports and having the architect design these works. I'm hopeful they'll want to proceed with some project.
Council is being asked to take money out of certain budgets to pay for the project, including $3 million from a fund the city usually uses to pay for road work and transit projects, as well as $2 million from a budget used to ease inflationary costs. Administration says it will look for sponsorship opportunities if this project is approved. Council is expected to debate the costs of the project at its next meeting. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
Recent talk of downtown revitalization has turned attention to a historic structure in the city core, the Windsor Arena. There's a developer who's interested in repurposing. As CBC's Dawson Chen explains, it's reopened an old debate.
Windsor Arena, built 100 years ago, but unused for the past decade. In its glory days, the barn hosted games of the Detroit Cougars and other original NHL hockey teams. But the arena has never recovered from the loss of the Windsor Spitfires, who moved to the WFCU Center in 2008. The barn closed its doors to the public in 2014 and hasn't seen a crowd since. The city at one point was using the site for salt storage, and there's been talk of demolition. There's also been talk from a private interest about taking over the site and returning it to use as a sports and entertainment venue.
It would encompass the original Windsor Arena, the barn, and the adjacent properties to revitalize that area as a home, first a home for the Windsor Express, and also as a multi-use venue for sporting and concerts. That's the vision.
Spencer Butcher Group's concept repackages a plan by the Windsor Express, who 5 years ago proposed making Windsor Arena the basketball team's home court. The city denied that expression of interest in 2021. A response from the city on the latest suggestion hasn't been forthcoming. Mayor Drew Dilkens has disclosed that Windsor Arena is among the municipal properties that are up for sale as part of the city's housing plan. And the downtown city councillor says he wants to see more details, such as a fully formed proposal that Spencer says has yet to be submitted.
I think we would love to see the proposal. Like, we really haven't seen anything concrete in front of us. So I know that's the talk around the offices. And I was like, what do you think? I'm like, it's hard to say what we think because we haven't seen anything concrete.
Meanwhile, this conversation has rekindled the argument that the $71 million WFCU Center is in the wrong place. One letter writer to the Windsor Star predicted 15 years ago that constructing the WFCU Center in the city's eastern edge would lead to problems in the city's core. He wrote another letter to the editor earlier this month to basically say, I told you so.
I felt that abandoning the downtown and putting an arena in a virtually inaccessible location on the far east side would draw people away from going downtown instead of bringing them downtown for events. I wish I was wrong. However, at the current time, there is no real draw to go downtown.
And the former CEO of the Sky Dome in Maple Leaf Gardens says he also knew back in 2008 that Windsor made a bad choice.
I thought it was a huge mistake right from the start. It's transit, one thing. There's no walkability. Windsor's never been known for a good bus service. So there's just no access. It's cars, cars, cars.
Earlier this month, City Council was unanimous in this decision to invest in downtown priorities, such as policing and property standards. But the fate of Windsor Arena remains undecided. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Tomorrow, right here on CBC Windsor at 6, we're taking our show on the road. We're going to be broadcasting live from downtown Windsor at 6 o'clock. And we're going to take a deep dive into the issues the core faces while seeking analysis on the city's plans to fix it. Our show will feature live guests with a variety of perspectives and stories. That's happening tomorrow at 6 p.m. right here on CBC Windsor News. Windsor police have arrested a 19-year-old after a teenager was stabbed multiple times in a downtown park. It happened Saturday night around 11:30 at Bruce Avenue Park. Police say the 16-year-old victim was in hospital in stable condition with serious injuries. They say it started with a verbal dispute between the victim and an unknown man. The suspect is charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. Police in Chatham-Kent are investigating a 50-person fight. Officers were called to Tecumseh Park just after 8 p.m. Saturday. A 14-year-old was charged with causing a disturbance, and a 16-year-old has been charged with possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose. Both were released to their parents with future court dates. Police say mace was found at the scene. No injuries have been reported. The OPP say they have recovered the body of a Michigan swimmer on Lake St. Clair near Bell River this weekend. Police say Saturday night they received a report of someone who jumped into the water from a pontoon boat and didn't resurface. Crews located the 28-year-old remains around 8 p.m. last night. Emergency crews from both sides of the border assisted with the search. Now, the drowning off Lake St. Clair and Bell River comes just days after 2 people were recovered from the water at Sandpoint Beach. Windsor's mayor says the city will look at any possible deficiencies at the beach following the 2 deaths. The 2 were spotted swimming west of Sandpoint Beach in an area with long-standing safety concerns. There's a steep drop into strong current of the Detroit River.
We have taken a lot of steps to post the area where it's unsafe to swim to make sure that people are aware. And it's not just in the English language. There's also pictorial demonstrations on the sign so that it really is ubiquitous language for everyone who's in that area. At the end of the day, we can't control people who enter the water on an adjacent property, and that's what happened here. And it's regretful that these folks had no knowledge about the dangers that exist and perhaps weren't aware of the signs that were posted in that general area. But if someone wants to enter that area, the Detroit River at the area adjacent to the beach, it doesn't matter how much money we spend at the beach, we're not going to be spending money at adjacent properties. And so had we had every penny and made sure that all of our plan was implemented for Sandpoint Beach, it's quite likely the same thing would have happened.
Dilkin says there are many newcomer families who often use Sandpoint Beach, and he says making sure the public better understands the dangers is something the city can do in the short term. He did specify how they may get that message across. One of the victims is a 26-year-old St. Clair College graduate. The other victim was a 26-year-old man. A family member told CBC Windsor he financially supported several of them. 2 years ago, the city released a concept design for the area that would flip the location of the beach and park, that would move the swimming area away from the mouth of the Detroit River. An environmental assessment to make that switch is expected to be ready next year. Speculation is growing at Queen's Park that the province could be in for an election next year. Ontario has fixed election dates. The next one is scheduled for 2026, but the Premier hasn't ruled out the possibility of asking for an election a year early. And opposition parties say they're ready for it. Lorenda Redekop has more.
The opposition parties insisted they're ready should an election be called.
Bring it on. Bring it on. You know what? Whether it's tomorrow or 2 years from now, we're going to be ready.
Marit Stiles says the NDP already has an election planning committee in place. The Premier fueled the rumors already circulating about a potential early election by not directly answering if he'd stick to the June 2026 election date.
We're going to make sure that we fulfill our agenda.
He said that while fulfilling one piece of his agenda, announcing an earlier date than planned for allowing the sale of booze in convenience stores. As for why Doug Ford may want to head back to the polls early, all three opposition parties point to the Greenbelt scandal, with the RCMP investigation still underway. An early election meaning less chance it will be finished.
I think it would be very disrespectful to the taxpayers. They have a majority government. I can't envision a reason why they would want to call an early election.
I would call on the Premier to not be focused on politics right now and to actually be focused on the real problems people are facing.
Mark it on your calendar.
Ontario has fixed election dates, set to happen every 4 years, added under former Liberal Premier Dalton McGuinty in 2004, fulfilling a campaign promise.
Never again, Speaker, will the Premier have the ability to set election dates when it is politically opportune for the government.
But one political scientist says a Premier can still trigger an early election simply by visiting the Lieutenant Governor.
The Premier can call an election at any time or ask that an election be called at any time. So you don't actually need to change the law.
However, he thinks the possibility of Ford going out on the campaign trail a year early is unlikely, and says this could be a distraction technique.
When a rumor like this comes out, it's something to talk about. You know, after a budget that really didn't do very much, and most of the spring session is usually about debating, what was in the budget.
He says there is a risk of upsetting voters by heading to the polls early, but that most people forget about that well before Election Day, and it doesn't affect their vote. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
At least 20 people, including 4 children, are dead after a series of powerful storms struck the United States on the weekend. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Kentucky were hit. The storms occurred just north of where an early season heat wave is setting records. The governor of Kentucky is the latest governor to declare a state of emergency. The storms destroyed homes and businesses, and some communities have been left without power. Forecasters are warning that the severe weather could shift to the East Coast. Colette, obviously we didn't get weather like, southern parts of the U.S. did, but it definitely got a little bit nasty for us last night. I even got a tornado watch message on my phone.
Yes, and we do have tornado watch messages in Ontario, not southwestern Ontario, but that are occurring as you and I speak here. And I'm going to get to those in just a moment, but kind of backing up to this active weather from the weekend in the U.S. Over the course of the weekend, 58 tornadoes, and you can add that to just over 900 that had already been reported in this young year of 2024. And then on top of that, Sunday, record-setting storm reports, over 630 within one day. So that includes tornadoes, but also can be straight line winds, so wind damage and hail reported as well. Plus, lightning was an issue in here, and of those deaths from the weekend, yes, at least one of those was due to a lightning strike. So much active weather, such an active weather season. And of course, it's not over with yet. We're not even to the end of May yet. And then speaking of what's happening a little bit closer to home, we do have some nicer conditions. I mean, in terms of it not being as wet into southwestern Ontario. I know we're dealing with some cloud cover, but it's more towards central and into eastern Ontario. A portion of eastern Ontario through the day has been in a tornado watch. Conditions favorable there that it could see a little bit of a spin, but that area is shrinking. Now, the nation's capital still included in that, and as from around Cornwall back along the St. Lawrence. So through that region, other areas like Kingston have been dropped out of it. Now, in terms of what's to come, I'm going to walk you through. We're not out of it. I know we've got the cloud cover. We're not out of the woods in terms of some rain showers coming our way, but the severe weather less likely for southwestern Ontario. There are your current temperatures. So many communities sitting at 18 degrees. We'll add some humidity in there, so the humidex values pull us into the low 20s. Definitely not oppressive. Something that certainly has been more noticeable through the day today have been these winds, and picking up these last few hours again, some of our wind gusts just now including exceeding 55 kilometers an hour. So in terms of the stronger winds, gustier winds, we'll keep those through the evening and early part of the overnight, so past midnight, then I expect they will be dropping off. So that's set up better for tomorrow. There's some of the cloud cover. It'd be nice to be done with it as this system's moving off to the northeast, but there's some wraparound with that. And there's the next system that's behind that one. So we do get into some wet weather returning, few isolated thunderstorms, more so I expect it to just be rain showers coming through into tomorrow. But the pattern begins to change quite nicely into Friday, and we'll see things kind of being carved out in our skies and getting into sunshine. So tonight your low is 14. Tomorrow we're up to 22. Do still expect some of that wet weather, and then you see that change as we go into Wednesday, and then we get into a long stretch, Meg, of really nice conditions.
Okay, my fingers are crossed for some good weather tomorrow night, because we will be broadcasting live from downtown right in the open air, and it looks like there's some showers or some rain, but maybe
I think we're going to get a window in there. So.
Okay, perfect. All right, just from 6 to 6:30, that's all we need.
You got it. I'll order it.
Thanks so much, Colette. This time of year, there's no shortage of entertainment in the skies. The spring bird migration brings hundreds of species to Windsor, Essex, especially to Point Pelee National Park, where the Festival of Birds runs from May 1st to the 20th. CBC Windsor wants to see your best photos of these special visitors, whether they were taken at Point Pelee, other natural areas around Windsor, Essex, or even in your own backyard. Those who submit will get a chance to win CBC Windsor swag and have your photo featured on CBC News platforms. Mike Evans of CBC Windsor, our in-house bird nerd, will judge the contest. Please send along your best bird images to Windsor at cbc.ca with the subject line, Spring Migration Photo. Please include your name, where and when the photo was taken, and the bird species. The deadline to submit is May 31st. Coming up, we head to campuses across Canada where pro-Palestinian encampments continue. Stay tuned. As the pro-Palestinian encampment continues on the University of Windsor's campus, it's the same at other post-secondary institutions across Ontario. Today, the University of Toronto took legal action against pro-Palestinian protesters. It's seeking an injunction to clear demonstrators from its downtown campus. The university issued a trespass notice Friday, ordering them to leave by this morning. But as this hour, the encampment remains. Meanwhile, in Montreal, a judge has made a decision about a protest at the Université du Québec in Montreal. CBC's Kwabena Odura has the details.
In the decision by the judge, the partial injunction request says that the protesters need to stop blocking doors, windows, and let UQAM's fire department have access into the buildings. The camp needs to be 2 meters away from the accesses so people can access the buildings in and out freely. I want to show you what the encampment looks like right now. This is what it looks like at all the entrances around this part of the UQAM campus. People are having trouble getting in and out of the buildings. And this encampment started really as a protest to the injunction request filed by McGill against the McGill encampment. At that time, people at this encampment were saying that they would invite people from the McGill encampment to be here if the other encampment got dismantled. So people here at this encampment are calling for more measures than the other encampments. They want all universities in Quebec to cut ties with Israel. They want the province to abolish that bureau that they have in Tel Aviv as well. UQAM says that they don't have any ties with Israel, no firearms, no frameworks with Israel, and they say that they won't be reacting to the judgment just yet. They want to study it and see how it goes. And protesters here say that they're in it for the long haul. It's in solidarity with all the encampments across the country and all the other encampments that have still stayed standing up until this time across the world, and they say that they won't leave until their demands are met. And police presence is here at all the entrances at the UQAM campus. Police say that they are not going to step in because they don't have authority to. They said that campus security could give tickets, but they are not allowed to do anything because that is not the injunction request. And they are just here to monitor the situation and make sure that everything remains safe and peaceful. Kwabena Odura, CBC News, Montreal.
We have more news coming up after the break. Stay tuned. We know auto theft is a big problem across Canada, including right here in Windsor. Well, in Peel, police there say they've arrested 16 people and laid hundreds of charges in connection with a months-long auto theft investigation.
As the investigation continued, investigators identified a local truck company that was facilitating the shipping of motor vehicles. A local company and trucking yard were identified within the region of Peel, and a family was identified who was responsible for facilitating and loading the transportation of motor vehicles. These individuals were facilitating the shipment of stolen vehicles through local intermodal hubs within the Greater Toronto Area and traveling the 401 corridor to the Port of Montreal. The vehicles were intended to be exported to the ports in the United Arab Emirates and the Port of Oman.
The investigation began back in October 2023. Police say 369 stolen vehicles valued at $33 million collectively have been recovered. The accused range in age from 17 years old to 57. Police say arrest warrants have been issued for 10 additional suspects. A group of bright and enterprising students in the United Arab Emirates has set a new world record.
We're learning how to do something that some people wish to learn about, how to make light, how to help people around the world and make a difference.
The students built more than 3,000 solar lights, and when they put them on display in Dubai, they set a Guinness World Record for the largest solar light bulb display. Students from 2 schools took part with the goal of learning more about renewable energy and sustainability. The lanterns will now be distributed to households in the Philippines that don't have access to electricity. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. And don't forget to watch The National tonight at 9 on CBC News Network, 10 p.m. on the CBC News app, CBC TV, and streaming. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.